Okay, so as I stated earlier on, I always like to give a little bit of a summary of ingredients, and I like to inform people and explain to people exactly what it is that they're eating. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to the beef mince. Now, this is effectively here is bog standard beef mince bought from the supermarket. And first of all, if we look, beef mince is obviously very, very stringy. And the reason for this is it is quite often a mix of different muscular parts from the beef and from the animal. Quite often supermarkets and butchers want to make money from the animals that they're using. So effectively what they do is they're using all of the muscular meat that is of a tighter and probably a firmer and much tougher variety. The more expensive cuts of meat, such as the sirloin steak from the back, the fillet steak from the back, are quite often very expensive. But there's other types of meat and other different parts of muscle that need used also. Part of that is often quite around the neck, quite around the bottoms of the arms, and these are often tougher cuts of meat. The reason for this is that they hold on a lot more weight of the animal and they're a harder working muscle. Unfortunately, when it comes to cooking, the problem that we have is they become tough. When we eat them tough, they're not very nice. A way around this is to make mincemeat and to make sausages. So effectively, all those cuts of meat, the tougher cuts of meat that aren't used for the more expensive cuts such as steak, are put through a grinder or a mincer, and we're given this stringy consistency of mincemeat. It tenderizes the meat as it's worked, and it makes it much easier to eat. That is a quick, rough rundown on your beef mince. Now, a massive and favourite ingredient of mine are stock cubes. Now, if we were in a restaurant, we would make our own stock from scratch. But in a domestic kitchen such as your own, we will definitely rely on bouillon or stock-based products. Now, the reason why I like the brand Oxo is because it is effectively a powder. And we can crush this up. Sometimes when you use other brands such as Knorr, the cube itself needs to actually melt, whereas in this instance here, this is a crumbly, flaky, powdery substance, and it dissolves a lot easier in liquid, and that is why I prefer the brand Oxo. Whereas a Knorr cube or another branded, supermarket branded cube tends to have to dissolve, and therefore you're sometimes left with a large amount of the cube that you can bite into. What happens is it's a very strong salty flavour in your mouth, not necessarily ideal. This is quite simply diced onion. Diced white onion is a bulb. It grows underneath the ground, and we dice it up in small quantities for the purpose of the cottage pie. An optional is a basic button mushroom. Again, very easily in the supermarket. These can be added in, they do not have to be. They're an optional extra. Some people love mushrooms and they will add them in. Cooking, as I often teach, there is no right or wrong answer to it. You can add a little bit, you can take a little bit away. If you want to add something extra in, I have seen carrots, diced carrot in cottage pie that people have made. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. If you enjoy it, by all means put it in. I've included tomato puree in the list, and the reason why I've included this tomato puree is quite simply because tomato and beef are a perfect marriage. They're a perfect match and they work really, really well together. I quite often will put tomato in anything that I'm doing that is beef based. It helps bolster and strengthen the flavour of the beef, and it also gives it a nice fruitier style of flavour as well. Another optional extra, which I don't and I'm not using here today, would also be red wine. Red wine works really, really well with beef. It comes really well and it marries together all the other ingredients. Ingredients for today: semi-skimmed milk, which we will be very careful with when we're using that, and I will discuss this further on in the video. This is homogenized pasteurized milk. Pasteurization from the guy Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur developed the method to kill the bacteria. When the milk comes from the dairy cow, it is quite often high in levels of harmful bacteria. So this guy Louis Pasteur developed the pasteurization method, where the milk is heated very rapidly and then cooled very rapidly, and then the harmful bacteria in the milk are then killed and is then bottled. The homogenization, which we also see in most brands of milk in this day and age, effectively in the dairy, all of the fat is removed, whether it be skimmed milk, semi-skimmed milk, the fat is removed all in one go, and then it is put back in through a mechanical process. It is put back in to give the different degrees of fat, whether it be skimmed, semi-skimmed, etc. So if you ever look at the label and you see homogenized, pasteurized milk, that is what it means. Today I have also pre-prepared some potatoes. These potatoes in this case are Maris Piper potatoes. They are quite simply peeled and they are quite simply cut in half. I always cut potatoes in half, and if you look at these sizes of potatoes here, excusing the wet hands, we want to try and get the potatoes an evenly size, and as even a size as possible. The reason for this is we want them to try and roughly cook at the same rate. If, for example, we put a very, very small potato in with a very, very large potato, common sense tells us that the smaller potato is going to be cooked a lot quicker. And for that reason, we want these potatoes to be all roughly the same size. Now, quite often potatoes can oxidize, so and they can turn black. Quite simple trick is we cover them with water, and that stops them going black if we have pre-peeled. People quite often ask, how do you know when things are cooked? Scientifically, we cook to kill bacteria. The reason we kill bacteria is to prevent food poisoning. Bacteria begins to die at 63 degrees and above. Good working practices is to cook food to 75. The bacteria begin to die at 63 degrees Celsius, and then they're generally, most of them are dead. The harmful bacteria are dead by 67 degrees. Now, we know that that liquid has came to the boil, and it has been boiling for a few minutes, so therefore we know that that should be scientifically safe, and any harmful bacteria within that meat are now dead. What I want to show people now is this. Now, this will frighten a lot of people, but all my years of cooking, that's the salt. Now, in all my years of cooking, when I watch people putting salt and seasoning things, they will generally do this as a pinch of salt. That is not a pinch of salt. That is a pinch of salt. If we put the right required amount of salt in, it will actually enhance the flavour of the natural food. And just out of noticing that this is an unfamiliar oven to me, I can actually tell that some ovens are uneven. And I know my mother, for example, has great trouble making her cakes because her oven actually heats uneven. And if you look here, it's actually browner around the edges than it is in the middle. But again, it's fine, it's cooked, and it looks well. But sometimes if you have trouble cooking cakes or anything like that, that is maybe a problem. Your oven is heating uneven. Unfortunately, there's not really a terrible lot we can do about that. So, come down then, just portioning. Nice and gentle across. And again, how much does everybody eat? It's entirely up to them.